Welcome into the Blurred Wire. It is your host, King Whale, and I've brought my best friend and guest on. Well, I guess I should stop saying guest because we're gonna start doing this as a regular thing.
If I guest every episode, am I still a guest or
Um,
am I a co-host?
I guess co-host. I guess let's graduate to co-host now.
I've graduated so soon.
Yes, yes,
Oh
you
my
have.
God. I feel honored. I'm
And
acing this.
it's really a special episode that you've graduated to co-host on because we're going to talk about one of the greatest films in likely a generation, and that is Madam Web.
Just for me?
Just for you. We've
I feel
saved
so
this
honored.
particular for this. I
What a
mean,
movie it was.
let me start with this. There's very few movies out there where people know it's going to be bad before it hits theaters. Before you see a trailer for it,
Hmm.
I feel like I nobody was going to give it a chance. There was no like, hey, let's it was, hey, this movie is going to suck.
Hmm.
And I feel like the only reason why it's made any money is because people are genuinely curious to how much does it suck. And they're
Right.
willing to spend money to see. And that's exactly what I did. It
Hmm.
was like it wasn't like I'm like I feel like I want to be in the know. So when people talk about why Madam Web was bad, I can be like, "Oh yeah, that this is why it was so bad."
Genuinely, the like reverse marketing this movie had made me go see it. Because if they had just released it like they had done like the Venom or the Morbius
Mhm.
movies before, I would have like completely ignored this movie entirely. But because of like the contempt that Dakota Johnson seemed to have during all of her like press tour for this movie, of like, this is awful. I hate this. I hate everyone involved. Get me out of here. It made me want to go see it and see what drove her so seemingly insane.
And I'm like, I don't know if like the Sony executives realized that like, hey, we're not going to make any money off of this. The only way that we can is if to shift the marketing because we know this is an absolute crap stain of a movie, but people might be curious to see how bad it actually is. So if we just start, sowing the seeds of how terrible it's going to be, hopefully that'll bring people out to spend money on it because they want to see how bad is it. It's like a restaurant and people are like, this is the worst food I've ever tasted. Someone's like, well, how bad is the food? I'm gonna go there just to see how bad it is.
It can't be that bad. It's like you got to lean into it. This is the world's worst food.
And I was willing to give it a chance because I know Sydney Sweeney's a good actor. I love Adam Scott from Parks and Recreation. You got me started on Parks and Recreation, and he's my
Love
favorite
Adam Scott.
character from Parks and Recreation. And I also love him in Severance.
Hmm.
Um, and Dakota Johnson, like I don't think she's a good actress, but I saw The High Note recently, which is a movie with her, Tracy Ellis Ross, Ice Cube, Kelvin Harrison, and she was fantastic in that movie. Like she was surrounded by some incredible talent, and I felt like she held her own. It was an enjoyable movie, and I
Hmm.
thoroughly liked it. And I was like, you know what? I will give you a chance. And I can't say I regret it because again, I did want to see how bad it was.
Sure.
But it's like just even the things she said on her press conference. Like you're talking about a Madam Web movie, and there was one press conference where he was like, "Can you name all the other Spider-Man movies?" And she
Hmm.
was like, "Oh yeah, the Tom Holland one." She was like, "Yeah, there's Spider-Man. Here he comes. Spider-Man. There he goes. And Spider-Man. Now he's here." And I could not tell if she was joking. I don't
That's
think
such a funny answer to that
she
question.
was.
That's so I really hope I
I
really
don't.
I don't even care. That's just hilarious. Here
And
he comes and there he goes.
And this guy was like, "So have you seen any other Marvel movies?" And she was like, I've seen like 4%, which means I've seen like 15% of one." And it was like, "Woman,
I
this
love
is
that.
this is the industry that you worked in."
She's
Like,
you know what? She's being honest. She's telling us exactly how she feels. She doesn't care about MCU movies. She's here to get her bag.
yep. And it's like, so any hope that Sony ever had of their movies ever connecting to the MCU, like I want to write an article on it and just be like, Sony, it's time to sell Spider-Man to the MCU, because if you take Spider-Man out, Sony, their movies are going to lose the money. Like,
Mm-hmm.
without the MCU, your Spider-Man movies would have lost you money. This
Mm-hmm.
is not going to turn a profit. You should have just done a tax write-off like Warner Bros. Did with Batgirl, because Madam Web was so like,
I don't know, man. Do you think Bradley Cooper even like knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy were before he signed on to be Rocket?
here's the
I
thing.
mean, how many of those actors knew like who they were?
Right.
They're just all after a role.
But did he say that when he went to the premiere? Did he tell people that?
He should
No.
have. It would have been hilarious.
Stupid. Oh. And it's just, it's like haunting to think about just how bad, how many plot holes, how many, like, the number one thing I'll probably zero in on is like, there's a lot of bad movies out there, bad Sony movies too, just bad movies in general, where you can say like the acting, like for example, Fantastic Four 2015. I'm not going to kill Michael B. Jordan for being in that movie. I think he did okay with the cards he was dealt. But
Hmm.
I'm like, every actor that appeared in this movie, whether it was a guest role or I don't care how much money you made, you should be ashamed. Like, you should feel like that's dirty money. Like, you can't spend it. Like, whatever Sony gave you, you ought to feel ashamed.
See,
Anybody that worked on that movie.
I think this is where we differ. I think one man's trash is another man's treasure in this regard because I love this. I think it was horror. I think it was awful, but I love it. It hit the so bad it's good like curve in reverse. This is like Catwoman, Halle Berry levels of like awful superhero movie, and it's phenomenal for it.
See, like Catwoman, Halle Berry just kind of drifted into meta where we forgot that it happened. But it also occurred in 2004, and that was before even like podcasting, social media, and like before all of this stuff really was a thing. And I feel
Hmm.
like Madam Web is going to live for a long time. And like my greatest fear is that it starts turning Marvel movies into just parodies and stuff that's so bad that you can just, oh yeah, it's just a terrible movie. Like, we don't, like, you don't want to associate superhero movies, like you don't want them to become synonymous with bad, terrible movies, because there are some really, really good ones out there. And it's still my favorite genre of movie.
Hmm.
And Sony is doing everything they can to ruin it. Like, I thought DC was the one that was ruining it. But now it's Sony, because like DC has some redeeming qualities to the stuff that they put out.
Hmm.
But if you remove Into the Spider-Verse movies, because those
Hmm.
were animated, and obviously you got to remove the Tom Holland movies because they were produced by Marvel.
Hmm.
After Sam Raimi is gone, what does Sony have? Like the Amazing Spider-Man
Venom, Carnage,
and Let There Be Carnage was not a good movie.
Morbius.
Morbius was terrible, as we all know.
Oh, it
You
was
did you like
great.
Morbius?
No,
Yeah, okay.
but
Thank you.
it was stupid and it was good. See,
But it's like,
I don't think that fear is actually happening. I don't think Sony is this pinnacle of superhero movies that's going to people
decline.
aren't looking to Let There Be Carnage as like a touchstone for what to do with superhero movies.
God, like, again, superhero fatigue. Like, a lot of people are saying they're starting to feel it, and this did not help. You know,
Hmm.
and like, the difference between Let There Be Carnage and Morbius is some movies can be objectively bad. Like, one man's there is such a thing as one man's trash is a one man's treasure. But like, I'm a musician, and I know the difference between like a crappy solo or something and like a really good solo. But there's
Hmm.
also just playing a wrong note, and that wrong note will be wrong no matter how much you like it or someone else likes it. It will be dissonant and it will be wrong. And some of the ADR in this
Hmm.
movie, the scene where Tahir Tahar Rahim's words did not match his mouth. That, like, as a person who studied sound engineering and ADR and all of that stuff, audio engineering, sound design, I don't know how the sound designer or audio engineer turned that into the director. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not saying I would have done like a much better job, but it's like, how do you turn that? This wasn't like a live performance where you messed up or flubbed a note. How do
sure.
you turn that in? And how does the director say, okay,
Yeah. How did he not
how?
did he not deliver a single usable line on set? And how was that like the final draft
And how do
of
you
this
not,
movie?
how does the edit not just pivot to B-roll to cover it up? Like, I know you probably want to see him talking, but if his mouth doesn't work, he might as well not be. Like, just pivot. Have his lines pivot to the skyscraper. I could take a video right now of the Charlotte skyline and plug it in, and it would look better than what we got on my phone, on my camera phone.
Hmm. So is that the wrong note that was being played in this movie?
100%, because that is objectively, that's not objectively bad. That is wrong. Like, that is just a mistake that should not make it into $1 million movie. And the thing that
Hmm.
makes it so upsetting is because there are so many sound designers, audio engineers, actors, even, filmmakers, people that are hungering, that would kill for a chance to make an $80 million movie that would, all like work on it and make it. And this is what we get from Hollywood.
I
This
really I
terrible
I
movie.
doubt that that was a decision from any specific audio engineer. Like that feels so to even someone like me who has absolutely zero experience with audio engineering, that feels so like comically wrong that I can't in good like conscience think that that was like a decision made by an engineer and instead like the fault of using that $80 million budget so horribly wrong that they couldn't afford to be able to do it right in the first place.
Yeah, and like, and I guess yeah, because the CGI for the scene and everything was probably so expensive, and they couldn't get him to redo his lines and have it line up. It probably was something they had to try to fix in post, and they didn't fix it in post.
Yeah.
And again, again, maybe it was too hard to recreate that CGI skyline or whatever.
Hmm.
It's the kind of thing that just makes it makes me, as one of those aspiring filmmakers, audio engineers, sound engineers, just angry, because it's like, again, it's so hard to get a shot like that, that you'd
Yeah.
think that everything that comes out, like, you're gonna have bad movies here and there, and you're gonna have some objectively bad movies here, and you're gonna have some movies that people love that other people aren't really feeling. Like, I loved The Marvels. A lot of people weren't feeling it, but I still thought it was a fantastic movie. And when I
Hmm.
talk about that movie, it's not like I have to say, like, oh yeah, I love The Marvels, even though there was a part where the ADR flub really didn't work. Like, there was
Right.
nothing, there was no wrong note in that movie. There was nothing that's stood out as just bad.
Right.
And just, and all the plot holes, none of it. It's just, and
I
I
don't
gotta say, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I don't feel like anyone was really characters. Like I hate in hindsight, I really it's really funny to me. And it's something I enjoy. But all of the like winks and nudges and nods to Ben Parker and Peter Parker. Why did we need that long scene of the guess the baby's name at the baby shower? That was just to what titillate us into ooh, that's Spider-Man in there.
And like, as soon as I saw Emma Roberts walk into the room, I was like, she's playing a character that's important. Like there's
Hmm.
something more about her being pregnant right
She's
now.
not just like a background character.
Yeah, and then it finally sank in. Oh, yes, that's May Parker. That's Peter's mom.
But we both know like that's not gonna go anywhere. They're not gonna there's
There's
no
nothing.
Madam Web 2.
Oh,
There's no Spider-Man doesn't I don't
I
think they can
will.
legally use it.
I will buy a bulldozer with all of my savings and I will take it to LA to Sony Studios and knock that thing down if they
No.
greenlight a Madam Web 2. There
I
is
really hope they
no.
do.
And the sad part is like, I don't know if it's worse, but there was bones of an okay story here.
Hmm.
There was bones of an okay story. A guy wants to kill these girls because he sees them killing him in his nightmares, and she's got to protect. Like there was some bone stuff that you could work with. You know, seeing
Hmm.
Sydney Sweeney, I love Isabella Merced. I think she's going to do great as Hawkgirl and
Hmm.
Superman Legacy. I don't know the other actress, and I feel ashamed that this is my first introduction to her catalog
Hmm.
because like you had some stuff that you could have worked with, but like just the failure with the
They
when
they
there
weren't given anything to work with.
I watched the Screen Rant pitch meeting for it, and it was so funny because he was like, "These girls, they're going to kill me and everything I've built." And he was like, "What did he build again?" And they were like, "Ah, the audience will figure it out." And it's like, what did he build?
Yeah, was it ever explained why he wanted the spider? Because he killed
Nope.
he killed see I forgot everyone's name. He killed Dakota Johnson's mom
Yep.
and to take the spider and then he just kept it in like a terrarium in his bedroom in New York City. How does that get him wealth?
And
Was he already wealthy?
did it bite him, and that's why he got the spider powers? Because we never saw him get powers. It was
I
just
don't
like, oh,
remember
now that I
seeing
have
him.
this spider,
Yeah.
I have these powers.
He or was did he have that before? Could he just do that?
You know, it's and again, I never want to blame actors or say like this actor is bad, except for like like Kristen Stewart or something. Like there are very few actors out there that I will like you know
Whoa, what did Kristen Stewart do? Are you talking about Twilight?
Twilight Man, Twilight Man,
Buddy.
and the
That's
Huntsman,
so
Snow White
good.
and the Huntsman. Nah,
Kristen Stewart
nah,
Kristen
man.
Stewart's performance in Twilight is should be studied. That was so she okay.
Oh my god,
We
we
don't
don't
have
have
time to
time to
talk
go
about.
into that. But
That's
like
for me personally.
Tahar Rahim, the guy who played Ezekiel Sims.
Mhm.
If Tahar Rahim is ever in a movie, I will not see it. I don't care who's in it. You can put my favorite actors. Chris Hemsworth could be in it. Josh Brolin could be in it.
Mhm.
I'm not going to see it if he's in it because
No?
that was the worst performance for a villain. That is the worst villain in Marvel history. That includes Fantastic Four's Doctor Doom. That
Mhm.
includes any terrible villain that we've ever. That includes Malekith from the Dark World. He is worse than both of them combined. And
Mhm.
I'm like, again, I don't know if the director specifically said, I want you to act really, really bad. But other than that, I cannot give a reason for this performance. And I'm like, at some point, as an actor, you have to say, hey, this is not good. I'm either going to quit or you need to rewrite this because I cannot be in something this poor. I cannot act this poorly. Like to me, like if you
Yeah.
have the capacity to act that poorly, you shouldn't even be able to. You're like, like when musicians get to a certain point, it's like you can't really play bad. Like even if they could give you you still can't really sound bad. It's like
Mhm.
this was a poor acting job. I
Yeah.
cannot see him ever again. Like it
Yeah.
made me almost like nauseous to see him on screen. It was revolting, repulsive to see his performance
Uh-huh. I don't think I felt that.
that badly about it.
I think to some degree you and I were watching different movies. Because I am definitely you mentioned it earlier about like superhero fatigue. I understand like it's something that you love. I have an interest mostly because of you and we keep
Yeah.
each other in orbit, but I am not super into upkeeping with like Marvel movies anymore now that like the big like Infinity War, the Infinity Saga is all wrapped up. That felt like a nice bow for me to just okay, great. I don't
Like that
really.
SpongeBob meme, like, I'm a head out. Bye. I'm a head
Absolutely.
out.
I'm a head out right after that. So it's interesting your take because to me this movie felt like the 2000s superhero movies before they all got MCUified,
Hmm.
because I really appreciate that era of superhero movies, for better or for worse, because it felt like they could be a little more self-contained. And I'm not saying like this felt obviously like it was trying to set up for something bigger, but I appreciate a superhero movie that is just its own thing, separate from a larger story trying to be told. You kind of have to write a story to begin with to be able to make it land.
Kind of
But
helps if the movie is not terrible as well.
right, but for me, it becomes campy at the level of which this was bad,
And I,
because
yeah,
of just for me, I don't think it was anything specifically with the like the on-screen talent. There was nothing there that was like utterly like repulsive or bad. I feel like they were just given awful material. I think everything bad about this was from an executive and behind the screens perspective, because what they put onto film was, was garbage,
and that's the
but
thing,
really
like,
funny
and
garbage.
while we watched it together in theaters, I came it with the same, like, we enjoyed the campy garbage and we were laughing at it. And like, that's how I initially felt. And like, maybe we should have recorded this after this because it would have just been like a laugh fest. But like,
Sure.
after a couple of days of like stewing on it, and I think like
It's
if I wasn't a film student, if I wasn't like if I didn't study film or study audio engineering or stuff like that, I could probably appreciate more of the camping. It's just, you watch it to like be like, wow, this is terrible. And it's really funny how terrible it is. And
mhm.
like, I get that perspective. And I'm glad I saw it with that perspective. I think it's just like sitting on it for a couple of days. I'm like, this is so genuinely terrible that it makes me upset with all these people who do not ever, because there will be great filmmakers that will never get a chance, never get a chance. And like
Mhm.
the person who I looked up the director for this movie, let me look it up again because I think they worked on, I don't know if it was Parks and Rec or they worked on a couple of things and it was like, oh, those were some good projects that they did. And it's like, they might not ever direct a film again for good reason. Um, who was it? It was so a writing team of Matt Shazma and Burke Sharpless. They'll probably never get jobs again. And it was directed by CJ Clarkson. And CJ Clarkson,
SJ Clarkson.
SJ, oh, what did I say? Sorry, SJ Clarkson. SJ Clarkson. And she worked on Heroes, which is a TV show I love. Me and my
Oh, she
brother watch a
did?
lot. She did.
What?
She directed a couple episodes of Heroes, and she directed some episodes of Jessica Jones, which was a fantastic TV show, which makes it,
Wow.
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I'm looking at her discography right now. It looks like a lot of TV
A lot of
episodes. Is this
TV.
her first movie?
It was her very first movie, and it
Very first
probably
movie.
should be her last,
But you know what?
unless she changes her name.
She directed a very highly rated episode of Succession.
Yeah.
She directed some of the Defenders.
Uh,
I think maybe she didn't feel comfortable with the the movie set. You know, actually this makes sense because this felt kind of like a TV movie. Like a straight to
we
remember
got a
like the
TV director, yes, like Disney
yeah,
Channel
those
straight to
Disney Channel movies back in the day.
remember
That's
at
kind
eight
of what
o'clock.
this feels like.
When you put it like that, that actually don't make sense. And again,
I think that really connected a lot of dots for
I think in like one of the Screen Rant pitch meetings made me laugh really hard because he was like, so yeah, after she yeah, and then at the end, Dakota Johnson, Madam Web, is gonna fall into the water and a firework is gonna hit her in the eye, and that's why she's blind and in a wheelchair. And they were
Mhm.
like, wait, so the firework hits her in the eye and that's why she's gonna be in a wheelchair and blind? Like she got blind and that also paralyzed her legs too. And he was like, yeah, don't worry about it. And it made me laugh so hard because again, the end scene, and again, Madam Web,
Yeah, it
if
kind
you
of grazed her eyes.
yeah, it grazed her eyes, which made her blind, whatever. And she was in a wheelchair. And it was
Mhm.
like, why?
Why?
I guess when you almost drown, you also lose your legs,
I
function
guess
of them.
maybe the firework did like a 180 and came back and hit her in the spine. on the way back up, and they just cut that scene for time.
And I remember Madam Web from when I was a little kid watching the Adventures of Spider-Man, like, animated shows, stuff I grew up on. She would appear in a
Hmm.
couple of the shows. That's why I love
Hmm.
seeing Spot and Across the Spider-Verse because he was in there too.
Hmm.
In that, old TV show I used to watch with my dad and my brother. And, I looked up after the movie, I looked up Madam Web. Like, I was like, what's her comic book origin?
Hmm.
She's a mutant who can see the future.
Oh, she's a mutant?
That's it. She was born paralyzed and blind, and she's a
Hmm.
mutant who can see the future.
Oh, rad. That's cool.
Right. She only became involved and like called herself Madam Web because she had an adventure with Spider-Man and decided to use her powers, and she was inspired by Spider-Man.
So she really, oh, okay.
So everything in the movie they completely made up.
So they tried to, oh, okay, connecting it to spider powers. Yeah, that is, well, her name is kind of misleading. Her name makes it sound like she is part of the spider family.
And I think that's kind of like how she becomes a hero because like Miss Marvel named herself after Captain Marvel. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
she kind of named herself after Spider-Man, but
Hmm.
she was like an old lady who could just see the future. It,
Hmm.
she was a mutant, like that was her where she got her powers from. So like seeing that, it was like, oh, so Sony really did make all of this up. It was like if you had to choose a Madam Web origin, how would you do it? Let's do it in the
Wow.
most terrible way possible.
So for this to be the chosen, because they could have put anything to page then or to screen, and they chose this. See, all of these little tidbits make they just make me laugh.
And like there's
This is what
another
I love so much about it, is it feels like a collection of really confusing uh decisions that were made that don't feel like they make any sense.
even like you mentioned, like Peru didn't really feel like Peru. It just felt like this weird spot in the jungle. And
Yeah,
like
upstate New York.
I saw another thing that was like, so her mom is gonna get bitten by the spider while she's dying, and that's gonna give her baby the powers, and she's gonna give birth to the kid in Peru. And the executives were like, yeah. And it was like, and then how does she get to New York again as a baby with a dead mom? And they were like, oh, just the creatures, the arachnid creatures, knew enough to know where she was from, so they just neatly dropped her off back in New York.
From Peru.
In Peru. Yeah, from Peru. They just
Mhm.
and then it was like when she went back to Peru to meet this sensei or whatever, and it was like, so how exactly isn't she like wanted for kidnapping? And they were like, oh, well, she'll just make it through the airports. I mean, airport security wasn't as intense back then. It was like 2 years
Yeah.
after 9/11.
Yeah. Why did they make it a period piece in the early 2000s? Was it just because they wanted to play Britney Spears as toxic?
To me, it's like if you're gonna
Is that
do
it?
like if you wanted us to like maybe believe that somehow she got through TSA even after being wanted, like you could have made it in at least like 2000. Like it's like at least try movie. Like try, give us
No,
something.
this is strictly a post 9/11 story. You could only tell Madam Web after 9/11.
And then in the climax, she drives the ambulance through the building that hits him at the exact right moment.
It's so good. It's so stupid and delicious and great.
Yep. And like I said, they never explained the villain's origin, why Ezekiel Sims is why he even wants a spider or how it gave him powers,
Hmm.
why he killed her mom.
But
And
you
like
you know what was good though? We want to talk about bad things. The CPR instructions. That was correct. Those are good CPR instructions.
that's how you teach CPR. I mean, you would know because you do work in a hospital.
That's
So
that is those are correct CPR instructions. I appreciated that. She wasn't doing it. I was paying attention when she was acting as a paramedic at like the like early fireworks building scene, she was not following her own advice. Her elbows were bent slightly, and I didn't see her fingers like interlocked, but her body position was really bad for chest compressions. But her verbal instructions in that scene in the hotel were technically correct.
Oh,
She should have given a better like time frame. You want to go people always say to the follow the beat of the BG staying alive. It's a really good like shorthand, and that song was out at the time, so don't know why you wouldn't do that. But at least the instructions for CPR were good. So if you take anything from this movie, you know a little bit better how to keep someone alive.
even I saw this article that said Sydney Sweeney, like when she realized she was going to be playing Julia Cornwall, who's Julia Carpenter from the comics,
Mm-hmm.
she scavenged for comics and tried to read up as much about her. And I was like, I really respect that. You know, you're going to play a superhero. You want to read about them. You know, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think Dakota Johnson bought a single Madam Web anything to find
Mm-hmm.
out who she was. And Sydney Sweeney was like, yeah, I really need this character to appear upside down. And
Mm-hmm.
like she fought to make sure that her character appeared upside down in one of the two scenes that showed them getting their spider powers eventually. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like, is that's what you fought for, Sydney Sweeney? You saw everything else going around you in the movie. You saw that, and that's what you. Hey, my character has got to hang upside down, otherwise I am walking off this set.
You
It's
know what
like
is the best scene of the movie?
obviously, and like it's like, is she gonna take them to a spider factory, and that's how they all get these spider powers? Like I, and they never explain how she ran into them. Because remember when they all met in the woods? It's like, first of all, just gonna leave 3 teenage girls in the woods.
Right.
Second of all, I'm surprised this movie didn't get slammed for having the teenage girls like immediately start flirting with teenage boys as if that's all they could ever do.
Mm-hmm.
Thirdly, it's like they never explain why she knew all of them in different ways. They just were like, oh yeah, I happened to see you before, and now I'm having visions to protect you. And that's why it's all
Yeah,
connected.
it
But
felt
we really
very
need to know
much
why.
like the answer to like a time travel paradox was always time travel. It's like you know it because you know it in the future, and that's the reason.
Except this one felt like nobody knows anything and nobody knows how to actually make a movie. So
Maybe we're all living in the year 2003, and everything and up to this point has just been a flash forward Madam Web style vision, including seeing that movie.
thinking about it, that actually makes more sense. And I
I
should
think that
just,
makes the most sense of everything that we've said so
yeah,
far.
I should just, take away all my reservations about this movie. So yeah, we should have. If we had recorded this right after we saw it, I probably would have been in a much funnier, like campy mood. But I just stewed on it too long,
Yeah,
and now I'm just angry.
it's really, I don't think I've seen you this upset about a movie before, man.
Nope, it's been a long time.
It's really cooked you up.
Yeah, so
You okay, bud? Do you want to talk about something a little happier?
I think it's just time to move on to our next movie. So this is the Blurred Wire. Thank you for joining me. Co-host has graduated, and yeah, that's Madam
I'm not
Web.
sure I want to graduate anymore if we're just going to talk about Madam Web for
If you've
for
had
the
the
remainder.
privilege, if you've had the privilege of seeing this movie, please leave your comments below and join us next time. Thank you so much for listening.
Have a good one.